Welcome to Puck Talk CS. I'm Chives alongside my man Steve. It's been going the last few weeks. I think for the both of us, we've had some busy time getting ready to talk some New York Rangers hockey as they opened the season last week.
Yeah, maybe more so you than me. I mean, I know Chiv's over here doing his thing, and we all respect it, love it, keep it up. But it's been great. I've got a lot to talk about when it comes to this team. I mean, after 3 games, and I got like a list full to say. Let's jump right in. Let's talk some puck. Now, after 3 games, Chives, well, overall, I think the Saturday night game in Columbus, that was a little bit of an outlier game. Especially at this point in the season. We'll talk a little bit more in the episode about like circumstances. But what has anything stood out to you? Do you have any main takeaways from this team? Maybe about that line number 2, line number 3. What are your main takeaways after 3 games?
Yeah, I like the way Kako is mixing with Zibanejad and Kreider. You know, they kept those two together. I think from a higher standpoint, Laviolette was speaking about today after the practice how he wants to keep business as usual with this game against Nashville. You saw Igor start 3 games. He might start again tomorrow. He was the first off the ice today. With the second line, you said they play a north-south game through Phil Hedl, who's kind of driving some play. Lafreniere's looked great on that line. I mean, he scored the first goal of the season. I don't think anyone expected that after his preseason in camp. And I had a chance to talk to him today about it, and he was very optimistic. He said he didn't think he had the best game against Arizona, but things are trending in the right direction. So second line's looking great. Panarin is he's back. He scored in the first game too. Third line still finding its identity. I mean, Lindgren, I think the only real concern overall is that, Ryan Lindgren stays healthy. So I'm getting a mix in the end of the game, and he always is.
That's the main thing with him. First of all, Lafreniere, I think he's been saying all the right things. Like he really has, especially after that Buffalo game. And I think the main thing for me coming in the season is we know Kako's going to be Kako. We're going to get that performance.
Yeah.
You hope you get a little bit more. But I think Lafreniere has been the main one out of these kids, if we could still even call them kids at this point. But I think Lafreniere has kind of been the most surprising for me. He's been off to a great start. I think that game in Buffalo, just all around, I think that's definitely in his top 5 best games in his career for Lafreniere. I mean, it was an awesome game.
Certainly the NHL level.
Yeah, for sure. So you hopefully think that he could keep it up. And Hito, I think that the best of Hito is yet to come, for sure.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, something that alongside Vince I was curious about. I talked to Phil Hedl, and then Vince asked Laviolette, was kind of harping on the fact that Hedl's now that 2C. And that I don't think by the look of the contract, I understand where there's conversations about, well, he signed Trocheck for 2C money. I've said this for a while now. I don't think Trocheck really meshed with Panarin well last season. And granted, that was under Gallant. But I do like the way Hedl's taken that 2C role. And I think Laviolette said today, he said, there's a point where you look and you say, he's not an 18-year-old kid in the NHL anymore. He's 24. He's ready to take that step. They gave him the opportunity, and he's looked good with it. So he's running with the opportunity, playing with Panarin and Lafreniere, and he's in that position. And I think it works for the team to have Trocheck playing and find an identity with Will Cooley, who's played great. He scored his first NHL goal, and Blake Wheeler, who's coming into his own. I know you have I think you have a positive and optimistic view of Wheeler from what we talked about.
I do. I definitely do. And I'm kind of surprised. A lot of our fan base has kind of ripped into Wheeler a little bit here, especially after game 2 and game 3, the home opener. And again, we got to give him a chance. After everything he's done, this is former captain of the Winnipeg Jets. Yeah, he's 37 years old. And he's going to be naturally, when you are 37, you're going to be on the decline. But we got to give him a chance to click. Now, listen, he hasn't really had a knock for the score sheet as of yet, but again, it's 3 games. It's 3 games. I'd like to think that the first 5 games are kind of anything after that is kind of like where we need guys to start stepping up. And listen, if we're sitting here in November and Blake Wheeler has like 3 or 4 points, like at the end of November, then yeah, we're gonna have that conversation about Blake Wheeler. But as of right now, I think he's fine.
Conversation about someone else too.
We're definitely not there yet.
We're not there yet.
But in terms of Blake Wheeler, I think even though he hasn't found the score sheet, he's had a couple of nice plays. Like I was just talking to you before the show started.
Yeah.
That the end of the first period, Wheeler was coming around that net and really had a nice scoring opportunity in the home opener. You really thought, or he really juked out the Coyotes. They thought he was going to pass out to the defenseman. He came around and hit that wraparound shot, and that was just, I thought that was a good quality opportunity, and that's just one examples that I think that are being overlooked, that the Ranger fans are overlooking too. Because we'll be honest, we're New York here. Fans are quick to harp on certain guys, so I really think that we should give Blake Wheeler the benefit of the doubt here.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's like, you got to think it's the first time. I understand you have new coaches, he's had new coaches for the last 20 years of his life. There's always been people coming in and out of doors. He played under Maurice for a while. He's had to adjust, but he's never played in a new city in the last number of years.
That's a good
He's
point.
played in Winnipeg for years. He left Boston a kid. He left Boston when he was like around the age of a Caco and Lafreniere. He's been in Winnipeg in that organization for a very long time. And I think that now he's 37. It's the first time he's adjusting. I think you saw that a little bit with Vlad and Kane too. And I don't think they also got much of that benefit either. And I think we, as observers of this team, I think it's something the fan base is quickly going to learn, because now they have 82 games to observe a player grow at his age and learn a new system and adjust. I'd like to see where we are in, like you said, November, December. If he's contributing, it's always a telltale, with New York. It was too early to make a judgment. It's always too early in New York to make a judgment.
I'm gonna dap you up after the show just for that point. I love it. You really think about it. This is a new situation for Wheeler. He's never been in a situation like this before. Even when he was with Winnipeg, there really wasn't, monster changes like this. He wasn't playing on a team where the central point now was, the development of kids. You look at Wheeler's role is also different on this team. I don't think Wheeler's played in a role like this, quite frankly, within like the last, you would have to go back like 5+ seasons.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Even more than that.
Right? He was with Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele. They were a marquee top line for Winnipeg. Like, if you looked at top lines around the league, you look at 2018, 2019, Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connors up there. I mean, they were one of the top first lines and most consistent in the league. I do think, like you're saying, this is a different role. Now he's playing with Vincent Trocheck, who's kind of like, he's a 2C, but he plays like he could be a 3C. And right now he's in that hole for the Rangers. And a young player in Will Cooley, who's had very little mental lapses in his first few NHL games. He looks like an NHL regular.
He does.
And it's impressive because he's playing steady as a third liner, and that's exactly what he was drafted to be. He wasn't drafted to be like a game breaker. He was drafted to be hard nosed, Ryan Callahan. Like, I'm impressed by it. And again, circling back to Wheeler, he's adjusting. He's used to. It's almost like the adjustment, I wouldn't say would be easier, but he was used to playing with players like a Zibanejad-Kreider combo in that Scheifele-Connor. Now he's not the complement to that line, and he's not really a driving that type of a line. We'll see what happens, though. Like you're saying, 3 games. They have a big road trip coming up against a lot of different teams and a lot of teams that are in different positions in the standings, right?
Yeah,
and where they are as an organization.
Winnipeg is going to be one of them, I believe.
Yeah.
We get a little revenge game in there.
Yeah, we'll see.
Silence the haters. Let's jump back to Kuzlime Cooley for a second. What's impressed to me is his confidence. A lot of these kids, maybe in their first, handful of games, especially when you're not that big name like a Connor Bedard, like it's maybe easier for someone like a Connor Bedard to come out and play with that confidence. They have the skill. Cooley's had, I think, his confidence has been through the roof. He's getting in there, and it's just his overall play, like physical play, has been awesome. Like, he's not afraid to come in there and lay the body, which I love. That's impressed me the most, I think.
Yeah, I love it too. I think something, with his first goal was like he used his body, blocked out a defender, ripped a shot. I mean, they can create. I think that line can create using that physical edge, their size, and Cooley's part of that. He's 6 feet tall. You're right. He's got an air of confidence. I don't think when the TV reporters were asking him questions, he didn't waver. And I think that's also a sign too, when you got some media attention and you're in a big city, New York, you think maybe at some point you see some cracks here or there, small little cracks. Haven't seen any from him, and I think it's just been upward trajectory since training camp.
Who and of course Trocheck on that line. I haven't been overly impressed with him, but I'm not like dissatisfied with him too. You know, it's
But you know,
3 games.
like I don't. When they went out and got Vincent Trocheck, right? They move Andrew Kopp. Ryan Strome leaves in free agency. And this was the 2C that a summer before they were looking at. They were looking to bring Trocheck in. And he's a Gallant style player, so that's why they were looking for that. They despite Strome's connection with Panarin, I knew the rumors were flying around about Vincent Trocheck. His physical edge, the energy he brings, you saw it at different points last year. I just think it's funny because like I think there's more in the tank for him, but I also feel like the consensus with Trocheck is like, okay, well, maybe he's not, putting up 70 points this season, but he's still contributing in other ways, right? Like, I feel like the way you said that is kind of how I see it too. Like, all right, I like to see more from him, but he's getting the job done. I just don't think he's a player that's going to catch flack for like when Panarin's not doing well in the postseason, you're like, you're supposed to be the guy.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Strome there. I got flashbacks of Ryan Strome the other in the home opener when Trocheck missed the wide open net.
Yeah.
And I was getting flashbacks of Ryan Strome.
Where was that, game 5?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of opportunities that Ryan Strome couldn't connect that I can remember. But
he had a nice pair of mitts though. I think he had nice hands. He had a good connection with Panarin. Just like you can see where Trocheck's value is. And on top of it, would you rather have kept like this is where I think the versatility actually played out, and I don't think it was planned this way. Like Trocheck is such a better 3C, I think, for this team than Strome would have been, and it worked out because now Phil Heedle's the 2C. So it's like if you kept Strome, I don't think Strome's connecting as well with a Wheeler and a Cooley.
I agree 100%. And again, you look at New York, the lights are brighter in New York, and some players are just not meant for New York. And not to say that Ryan Strome wasn't meant, but I think in terms of where this team wants to go, I just don't see him clicking for me, at least. But let's jump over now. We'll talk about the 2 games individually now. We'll talk about the Columbus game first. Obviously, coming off an outstanding and dominant performance against the Buffalo Sabres. Really not the game that you really want to see from this team. And it was tough. Yeah. It's tough, especially when you get 2 goals wiped off the board early. And one of them really I thought was a doozy, really didn't need to happen. Just bad situational awareness from a great player like Kreider. But what's your opinion of this game?
Yeah, so, Buffalo was like near perfect. And I think, it's different though. Last season, the Rangers opened against Tampa and they smacked them 4-1. And it was like, oh my, like they're here. Like this is it. Cup runs on. And I think after that, the wheels fell off. Along the course of the season, it just never felt like they were there. It felt like 2015, 2016 again to me. And then, yeah, you start this season and I feel like it wasn't about that it was near perfect. It was more of like, all right, everything that they've been talking about structure-wise is leading to things. And it's what I think everyone was hoping to see from what Laviolette has been preaching about the team. You go to Columbus and you know what? I broadcast a football game, what was it, last Friday? I was at the Penn State game over the weekend. When you see underdog teams trying to get back into a game. Now, granted, the Rangers were not the underdog in that game.
Not at all.
But when you see, I'm a Raiders guy, and I watch the Giants. I watch the local teams. With the Giants, with the Waller play, like when you get opportunities like that taken away time and time again, the team gets buried. And I think that's what happened. You had Phil Heedle score a beautiful goal. Gustafson, Laviolette has preached that he's got a great first zone exit pass. He hits Lafreniere and Heedle in stride. Loff with a beautiful dish to Heedle, buries it, taken away. Zibanejad on the forecheck, steals the puck, scores, taken away. You would have had a 3-1 or 3-0 lead in that game. And I think from there, they just made a few small mistakes. And you know what? I think they move forward quick. And I think transitioning, I don't know. What do you have to say about that game?
I agree with you on that last part. Right? I think that this is a game that in a few months is definitely not going to matter. I think if when we play Columbus in January and March, we're smacking the shit out of them. And the thing about these teams is I think Columbus is not a good team. And the sad part is we made them look like a good team.
David Church. It's like the three kisses of death, the hat trick from a grinder, right? The Rangers, they always give up goals like that. They give up a first career NHL goal in a first career NHL game. And then Merzlikins leaves the game with like the flu, and then Spencer Martin comes in. Like, you can't make that up. That had all the writings on the wall for the Rangers to lose.
I know, and it's more disappointing that we couldn't generate everything, and just shows you that the momentum really got wiped out when we got those 2 goals taken away.
I thought they pushed in the third.
Yeah, but at that point it was too late,
Too little too late.
A little too late. Yeah. My main takeaway is that Ryan Lindgren is such a catalyst to this team. I mean, really, when he's missing, and I'm not even talking offensively, like defensively, holding the puck in the neutral zone. I mean, we were lacking in those categories, and we know Ryan Lindgren is such a driver to this team. But I mean, it's crazy. When he's not in the lineup, it's evidently clear that people on different lines really just don't play as well when he's in the lineup.
He is like the ultimate balance, like the Lady Liberty of balance for this team. He's in the mix. And yeah, I think you saw the difference. And I guess to swing it to that home opener, electric atmosphere. And Lindgren takes a check first period from Lawson Krause. And he was already day-to-day, right? You mentioned that he wasn't in that Columbus game. He wasn't in the practices. He plays in the game, and he takes a check first period, and you could just see he's in discomfort. And all you're thinking about is
such a dog,
right? You're thinking about last season, and you're like, oh, like when they don't have him, it's just a different team. And lo and behold, he fights through it. He was at practice today, full practice, with Fox, and he looked really good. And of course, he mixed it up at the end of the game. I mean, let's talk about that home opener, though.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I kind of want to give the Coyotes a little bit of credit. They actually played really well. I don't think, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I think it goes two ways. I don't think Coyotes are that bad of a team on paper. They beat the Devils before they played us.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, one of the Coyotes writers was sitting next to me and said that they had no business winning that. But you know what I thought to myself? Like, the NHL is changing. The NHL is changing. Every team's got skill players. And if those skill players can break through and hang in there, you get a game like this, 2-1, you know? It's good for the league. Right? Like,
yeah,
Coyotes looking good.
Yeah, they made some good additions, I thought, too. Matt Dumba was all over the ice. I mean, he was a great addition.
Even Sean Durzi from the LA Kings, he was good. Logan Cooley looked great.
Yeah, he looked great as well.
Cool to see him. I mean, the last game I covered for Quinnipiac was the national championship, and now the home opening game for the Rangers is Logan Cooley skating. So it's pretty cool to see him.
That's cool.
You know, but I like you're saying, like, they score on the power play. Johnny said it the whole game. Like, you can't, if the Coyotes couldn't score on the 5-on-3, you don't deserve to win a hockey game if you don't do that. The Rangers score on the power play. It just felt different, though. Gallant's teams, it was like, if we don't score on the power play, I don't know, we're hanging in there. I feel like with this Laviolette system, yes, they scored on the power play, but there were shifts at a time where they were in the offensive zone. Shifts at a time. I also love the neutral zone from the Rangers, that they were sitting back like the Islanders did. I got a chance to ask Mika about it, and he said, you know, we've played those teams for years that sit back and wait for us to come into the zone. Now we're doing it to the other teams.
I like that. Right? That's a great answer, and that's the one thing that we wanted to see change as a fan. Here's the other thing that I say. And I don't think we were perfect in this game. Obviously not, and I don't think it was a well-played game. But when you think about it, when you're sitting here in April and you're sitting here in March, you're not going to remember this game. All you're going to need is those 2 points, and that's all that's going to matter. So in the beginning of the season, if you win ugly games, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at the end of the season. So again, and the other thing is that, you know, bad teams at this time of year, they don't know that they're bad.
They're playing well.
Like the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Coyotes, they're not bad at these points. So they actually have something to play for up to these moments. So when you're a bad team and I would say past that January mark, you know, you just run out of stamina and it all falls apart for you. So I think the Arizona Coyotes and Columbus Blue Jackets are two teams that when we play them next year in 2024, I'm confident that we could beat them. You know, and
Yeah.
I think it's just early season getting up on their ice. And again, bad teams are just not as bad. They're not into prime bad mode yet. But again, it wasn't a bad game played by us, and we got those 2 points. It didn't matter. And despite this not being like a game you would expect, you would expect, maybe the Rangers winning like 5-2 or 6-2. There's still a lot of positives to take away with this at the end of the day. And of
Yeah.
course, we got to talk about that ending as well. I love it.
You
I
know what?
love
It's
it.
funny because I think the Rangers brought in Reeves, and Gallant was a little bit of like a coach that would preach that style of play, like hardcore. And you already have Lindgren. You bring in Goodrow. Like I feel like I've been talking about every episode with the physical play. I love it. After that Tom Wilson incident, they wanted changes within the organization. They brought in players to demonstrate that to the younger players. They're no longer in the organization, but the players still have that in them. You saw Miko with a Triple H little impression there. Like, you love to see that. Even the cool as a cucumber assistant captain of the team, your 1C, is getting involved too. Igor, I mean, come on, he's a character. He walks by in the locker room and it says to Vince, he was like, Ryan Lindgren's Iron Man. Like, he's Robert Downey Jr. Better watch out. So it's just stuff like that where it's like the team has the confidence. Listen, they're in the cup contending window. Like, they know they gotta bring that physical nature. You saw Barclay Goodrow in the playoffs have a fight last year when the Rangers were struggling. They lost to Chicago like 3-1 or 4-1 at home, and Trouba threw his helmet. The next few games, Goodrow and Trouba were laying guys out and fighting every game. Braden Schneider fighting. Like, you like to see that response, and I do think it shows the observers, the fans, that they're really bought in.
I really think that Goodrow is an underrated player
Mm-hmm.
on this team,
So is Nick
especially
Bonino.
Nick Bonino too. He's not. Thank you. I don't know why. He's just been. I got so much on my mind. I've been impressed with him, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just somebody that's been there so many times over and over again. And I really think that he was an underlooked piece, especially to the Ranger fans. In addition, during the offseason. So
Mm-hmm.
I like Nick Bonino on this team, and I like Barclay Goodrow. And again, these are two players that you don't really fear their impact this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Once we start
Right.
getting to the end of the season and the postseason, that's when you feel their impact. So that's what I like about them.
Yeah, you had that 5-on-3 kill where they had Goodrow, Trouba, Miller, and that like Trouba was a dog on that.
He is, and what I love about him is that it's early on in the season.
Mhm.
The intensity is just going to get dialed up as we move along here towards the end of the season, or as the season goes along.
Mhm.
So let's end on our final discussion note here, and that is something that's been circling around a lot, and I'm really curious to get your opinion on this, and that is Patrick Kane. The rumors are swirling around that the Rangers are one of, if not the top favorite, to make
Yeah.
a reunion at some point this season.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because it doesn't feel like like he's unsigned by the team, but it's weird because it's like he's unsigned, and part of that's because of the surgery. Like, none of this is like, oh, like I can't speculate what went on in the conversations with the team and Kane, but it's like I feel like it's being talked about. Like, why would New York not be his top choice again? Um, I think it's more from New York's end if they want to bring him back, right? Like, that's what it comes down to. It's not. I think Kane is like, yeah, I was traded here. I moved my family. Like, yeah, I'd like to probably be here. That's what I'd assume. Like, that's a choice. Of course, the other choice to me is Buffalo, right? His home team. Like, he's literally pictured in a hockey card as a kid at a Buffalo Sabres game. He was a fan as a kid, similar to Alex Tuck.
And
If he
Detroit.
goes up there, it's like they could he could be on a team that breaks a playoff drought for his hometown, right? That'd be pretty cool. And there's one more
And Detroit. Detroit's the other one too that I think was a top favorite
with the Brinkat.
to get him. Yeah, I like that. Here's the way I see it though, and I think you made the money point of the day. Clip Chives right there on that clip. The thing is that by the time he returns and he gets back on the ice, he's only going to want to go to a playoff team,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like an addition. He's like a trade deadline acquisition.
Yeah.
And that's the way I see him,
Yeah.
and I think he's going to sign a cheap 1-year deal. That way he can kind of build himself back up. That way he could for free agency for next season. That's how I see it. And I think for me, I think the Rangers out of the Red Wings and the Sabres are going to be in the best position for the playoffs.
Yeah, you know what? I think the tough thing, you're right. It's all about the playoffs, right? And I think the tough thing for the Rangers that they're facing right now is kind of the narrative, right? Of, well, it's 3 games in and Blake Wheeler's not doing so much. And he was your right wing answer. And now it's like, all right, well, we talked about earlier in the episode, November comes around, then what, right? Then what? Well, guess who comes around the block come November, December? Patrick Kane. So I think that's where things are going to get dicey. It's going to be, I think, a downhill thing. Maybe something else will come out. Maybe we'll talk about something else, or he'll have a conversation, interview, or whatnot that might allude to something else. I'm sure he's going to take his time and due diligence for
Oh, of
choosing.
course.
You don't got to rush back.
Yeah.
Surgery's looking good. He's on the ice. They're saying he's recovering pretty fast from the surgery. So with that, it's like, I think the conversation is going to start pretty quickly in New York picking up, and I think it's only going to keep, the intensity is going to keep picking up with that. I think as the Rangers go about their season, because the right wing isn't working perfectly for them. I mean, the real question is, do you bring Kane back? And pretty much like by the way the lines look this moment right now, do you want to slot him in with Will, Cooley, and Trocheck? Like, do you shuffle the deck and bring Kane in? There's a lot of questions. Very slippery slope. You did it once and it didn't work out the best, but he did put up like 12 points in 19 games, and he did put up 6 points in 7 playoff games. Like, he's not a guy that's going to, be Nick Bonino 8 block shots in 3 games, right? So I think it's just something they're going to have to decide.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, I'm happy we're not at this crossroad yet.
Yeah.
We got half a season ago before we started dumping into these big questions. But my first reaction, again, the fan in me at first was kind of like, yeah, let's bring him back. And then the more you think about it, it's kind of like, do we want to run the same thing back? And again, when you look, where do we slot him in? There just isn't a big, there isn't a big glare at this Ranger team where we go, oh yeah, that we need an upgrade, and I don't know if that's the upgrade we need.
But I give you the opposite side of it. I'm just playing devil's advocate with you, Steve.
Oh, I love it. Let's hear it.
I'm playing devil's advocate here. So a team, maybe it's not the Rangers, brings Kane back, and he's putting up points. He's playing maybe not prime Showtime, but that brand of hockey. Is that the gamble? That's the gamble you're playing with. Do you say to yourself, he's on Buffalo and he's playing pretty well, and in the playoffs he's playing pretty well? You're saying to yourself, could have brought him in.
I don't know if he's going to Buffalo. I don't know. Yeah. Again, I think he's going to go to the team that is going to obviously he's going to pay him, and I think our cap isn't in the greatest scenario situation.
I think that's the biggest aspect looming over everything.
I think that we have enough in the cap space. Again, I'd have to look at the numbers again, but I do believe we have enough space to get him on a cheap 1-year deal, which again, I think that's all he's looking for. He's looking for an opportunity to play in the postseason, and not only that, but he wants to be in the best scenario that's going to obviously drive his stock up for free agency. And I think that team's the Rangers. I don't think he's going to get that quality opportunity on the Sabres or the Red Wings, especially in a packed, conference that we play in. So
I think Buffalo is going to make their run for him. I think Detroit will, but I don't think the Yzer plan's going as well as it initially looked like it would.
I agree with that. When
they first brought him in, it was like, oh, Detroit's going to turn things around and make the playoffs. And out of Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo, Detroit, I think, is the team that's kind of struggled the most. So they don't have a goaltender, right? So with that said, though, with Patrick Kane, the last point I'll bring up on him is that Chris Drury and the management group brought him in. So I think the real question is, how did they view Kane in New York? They brought him in knowing he had the injury. So is it like, all right, we're going to give him a second chance? Or do they view it kind of like there's two sides to the conversation? And I think the management's going to kind of look at it one angle or the other. Is it going to be, we brought him in, we understood he had the injury, he maybe didn't play the best expectation, we had a coach that maybe didn't utilize him the best in a system that didn't fit him the best? do they look now and say, maybe, we take a shot at him? Or do they look and say, you know what, he just wasn't what we needed. He's not our style and brand, and we just don't have the cap space to fit him. I think the Rangers organization is going to be at a crossroads in more than one way of just signing Patrick Kane. Like, I think it means a lot to see how they're going to manage the cap in that type of a situation. Do they shuffle the lineup? Is this something that we're going to now expect every year? Because it seems like we mentioned Gustafsson on this episode, Wheeler, Nick Bonino. These are all players that are adding value, depth value. And it seems like that's exactly what was translating from the offseason. We're not going for Patrick Kane yet. So it'll be interesting. Come November, December, keep your eyes out. We're going to be talking about it, I'm sure, for a while.
I'm sure. How about this? We'll end off on a question like this. Chives. These rumors, Patrick Kane rumors, headed back to New York. Are these rumors, or do you think this is reality on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have no insight on that, but I'd say on my feeling, I think it's true. I think it's true. And the reason I say that is because every time you look at a major free agent, they're asked at some point the question of, what other teams did you talk to? And they say, oh, I talked to Nashville, Detroit, Philly, Columbus. I talked to Chicago. These conversations are ongoing. And I find that with all free agents. Patrick Kane for sure was talking to other teams before this. And yeah, New York was the one for him. You talked about that. But if you don't think for a second he at least didn't have a phone call with the Sabres, or, oh, this scout talked to him here or there.
Oh, of course.
I think it's real. And I think it's real because it's kind of like, it's this odd situation. It's not like the Rangers didn't sign him and now they have a chance to sign him again. It's not like they're looking to bring back a player they formerly had. It's a weird situation where it's like, he was a Ranger, he wasn't signed, but it feels like part of that's because of the injury. I don't think it's necessarily because I do think from an organization standpoint, they may have wanted to change things. But I have a feeling, man, like if Kane's healthy, granted, that would have changed a lot. Probably would have changed the postseason to some degree, right? But if Kane's healthy, I have a feeling like they probably look to have signed him in the summer. I genuinely think that. And I think with that stated, it's this weird situation where it's like he's almost like not the Rangers' property right now, but it's also kind of like he kind of is. Like it feels like they got kind of first dibs on him. So that's why I think it's real.
And again, he's more comfortable here with us too.
Now, Steve, I got a question for you.
Let's hear it.
Same deal. What's your thoughts? Real?
I think it's early on right now. I think the way jury's approaching this, and I'll wrap it up quick here before we go. The way jury is approaching this is that he's keeping tabs on this, but this isn't like the piece. Like we aren't calling him up going like we're involved in everything, but we're keeping tabs right now. I think we got to see how we play out. I would fizzle this out to somewhere around a 60%. I think that this is the boat or the train is starting to take off.
You know what? I wanted to finish the episode, Steve-O, but I got a question. And we're talking baseball right now, I know.
Ooh.
The New York Yankees missed their opportunity to sign Manny Machado and Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper isn't necessarily old, but he's looking at the back nine right now, right? Not like it's not staring him in the face, but he's on like hole number 8 at the first half of his career. Bryce Harper is leading the Phillies again. I mean, dog. Do you look at this situation similarly? Like, well, all right, if we miss out on Patrick Kane and we run with what we got and we start to, maybe 1-2 postseasons fail the next 2 years, like maybe we should have brought Kane in. And maybe Kane, I don't think Kane goes elsewhere and does what Harper's doing with the Phillies, but do you look and say like, that was something that I think the Yankees fans, the media, I think they look back at that time where they had 2 of those free agents available, and they do have the playoff, like the big game moment mentality. And that's what Patty Kane has. So do you look at it the same?
That's a great question. Certainly looking at Bryce Harper, looking back at Brian Cashman, it's like, oh, well, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
But hockey's different, and I don't think I can answer that right now at this moment. I have to see more from our team. But I will say that Kane is a player like that. He is a player come postseason time. It's not hurting you having him on the roster.
No.
So, and the way you framed it, yeah, I gotta say yes, but we'll see. We'll keep tabs open like that.
I think it would just be the most Ranger moment ever to like not sign him when like you kind of I'm not this is me stating that they have first dibs. I feel that way. That could be 100% false. I feel they kind of have, you know, definitely more of a spot and a little more leverage with Kane in conversations. But I do think the one thing to wrap things up that I'll say is like I I'd hate to regret not signing him. But then
Yeah.
again, it's like second time in a row.
And you don't realize that until it's over. Like
Yeah.
Bryce Harper in the moment
Yeah.
when the Yankees didn't get Bryce Harper,
It's like, well, we got
it's like,
Josh.
oh, we didn't get Bryce Harper.
We got
It's
Stanton.
now he's killing it with the Phillies back-to-back years, hitting, home run, 2 home runs every single night. And he's just him staring down players that talk shit about him.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, as a fan, it's just, you don't want to see that happen. But again, I also don't see Patrick Kane going to one of our rival teams. Like, I don't see Patrick Kane going to Devils. I don't see him going to the Islanders. I don't see him going to the Penguins. So again, it's tough. It's too early to talk about this. I need again.
Right.
I think it really
we'll tuck it in.
Of course we're gonna talk about it on the side, but I can't officially put a stamp off approval but
too early. 3 games in.
I need to see. I think it really depends on the state of our team in 3 months. Who knows? Maybe we suck. Maybe we're not even a playoff team.
Yeah, you know what? That goes to what we were saying before, man. Like the Devils this season are gonna have a tougher time. Teams get up to play you. You win a playoff series, teams get up to play you. Arizona not coming into New Jersey thinking they're gonna roll over you.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the Rangers. Every team gets up to play the Rangers. Every team. You play an MSG, every player. My dream, score an MSG. Oh, it's the best arena in the world. Jimmy Vesey said it to me last week. He was like, when I was a kid growing up, I grew up in Massachusetts, outside of Boston. Where did he want to play? He wanted to play in New York City. Everybody gets up to play New York, man. So you know what? If they do struggle a little bit, it becomes an interesting conversation.
The more we have this conversation, I'm more inclined to say, yeah, bring him back. So we're going to end it here.
We're putting it to bed.
On Puck Talk CS. That'll wrap us up here. We got a game coming up home against the Nashville Predators. We'll be back at it again next week to recap that and preview the long-awaited dreadful road trip, which I think is not going to be the worst thing for this team at this point in the season. But listen, we'll preview that on next week's episode. Follow our socials, of course, at pucktalkcs.com, pucktalkcs on the gram, all socials, the Spotify, the YouTube. We've been pumping out shorts on YouTube. And always remember, it's just the luck of the puck.